Seth Rollins has seemed to acknowledge a connection to the individual wearing a mask. We will examine that aspect. Additionally, we will explore the situation involving Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, and other related matters. To begin, let's focus on Seth Rollins, since this marks the initial occasion where he is discussing the person in the mask. Not only is he mentioning it, but he also appears to be suggesting his own participation in that scenario. In a recent conversation, Seth Rollins shared these words regarding the incident with a masked figure. He stated, "I'm letting you know at this moment, my shoulder isn't in good condition, but I don't rely on my shoulders for my well-known technique. So once more, I'll allow you to piece it together. You can determine it." That concludes his statement. It's a quite intriguing comment from Seth Rollins, essentially informing the audience that he could still perform his distinctive action even while his shoulder is healing, which naturally implies that Seth might have been responsible for the encounter with Bron Breakker during the Royal Rumble event. Seth Rollins is essentially indicating that despite having an injured shoulder, he could still appear briefly to execute a specific move like a stomp. Therefore, he is encouraging people to view him as a potential candidate for the role of the masked person who targeted Bron Breakker at the Royal Rumble. Currently, there are some discussions suggesting that it will eventually come to light that Seth Rollins was the one directing these recent incidents involving the masked individual. However, the unexpected element is that if this turns out to be accurate, why would Seth essentially disclose such a significant detail in an ordinary discussion? If Seth was indeed the orchestrator of the event, it seems logical that they would maintain more discretion about it. Yet, for him to participate in this dialogue and essentially hint strongly at being the masked figure who appeared at the Royal Rumble, it comes across as somewhat unanticipated. This situation prompts questions about whether there might be an additional unexpected turn or development on the horizon, because it doesn't seem plausible that Seth Rollins would simply reveal that major element in an off-the-record manner during a conversation. Consequently, Seth's words are certainly causing supporters to ponder the matter more deeply. What Seth mentioned holds validity. His shoulder remains impaired. He isn't able to raise heavy weights or engage in full competitions. But for a swift appearance to deliver a strike in a particular foot-based action, he wouldn't need full use of his shoulders for those elements. It's an effective way to build intrigue and a solid observation from him. So, from a practical standpoint, perhaps Seth Rollins isn't intended to be portrayed as the actual masked individual in the end. At the same time, it appears overly simplistic for Seth to be the one who carried out the action. Seth's name was the initial one mentioned by Paul Heyman when the incident occurred at the Royal Rumble. And now, with Seth essentially claiming responsibility in this discussion, something certainly seems unusual. It simply cannot be that direct. Seth is aiming for us to believe he was the one concealed during the Royal Rumble. But what if the true disclosure is what enthusiasts have been speculating for several months, that the masked person isn't physically Seth Rollins, but rather a strategic plan that Seth is managing from afar? It's not him personally in the disguise, but he did arrange for the event to happen and remains a key planner without directly involving himself too much. That approach appears to be a viable option that's still very much possible. We discussed this not long ago, but it truly seems like the primary satisfying conclusion for this ongoing masked figure narrative will be a confrontation between Bron Breakker and Seth Rollins. Any alternative resolution might not hold up as well. It just looks like the ideal setup to reintroduce Seth and build toward the significant matchup, revealing that Seth had been observing or monitoring the situation all along. That's how he managed to coordinate these precisely timed occurrences. So, that was a notable statement from Seth Rollins. We will need to observe how this story with the masked person unfolds, whether there will be further incidents, and perhaps additional clues that Seth is indeed the one directing it all. Liv Morgan emerged as a victor in the 2026 Women's Royal Rumble, which provides her the opportunity to challenge any champion in the women's division at WrestleMania 42. Liv Morgan has not yet formally announced her choice. She did suggest the possibility of switching to the SmackDown brand and considering the developments with Jade Cargill and the Women's Championship there, but all the indications and subtle hints suggest that Liv Morgan is genuinely leaning toward the Women's World Championship. There have been a few cases where the Royal Rumble winner deviates and picks a champion from a different brand, but generally, the Royal Rumble winner tend to select the champion from their own brand. We observed this pattern not too long ago with Roman Reigns. Roman has been more aligned with the Raw program in recent times, and that culminated in him choosing to face the Raw World Champion, CM Punk. A comparable logic applies here for Liv Morgan. It would be quite unusual for Liv Morgan to opt for Jade Cargill and the women's title at WrestleMania 42. That doesn't align with the apparent path the organization is taking, and it comes across as more of an arbitrary pairing. It appears very probable that Liv Morgan will go with the World Championship because that's where the more compelling narrative lies, and numerous foundational elements have already been established. Since Liv Morgan made her comeback in late November, Raquel Rodriguez has been pursuing the women's world title. Raquel has had several chances to overcome Stephanie and claim that championship. However, Raquel has been unsuccessful in each of those major encounters over the past few months. The latest significant setback occurred on the Raw episode following the Royal Rumble, where Raquel competed against Stephanie in a no-holds-barred match for the title. Liv Morgan attempted to support and aid Raquel during the contest, but it was Liv's involvement that inadvertently caused a distraction for Raquel, enabling Stephanie to gain the advantage and secure the victory. Following the match, Liv Morgan confronted Stephanie, lifted the women's world title, and raised it above her head. That instance appeared to be Liv Morgan implicitly signaling her decision for her WrestleMania 42 opponent. Nevertheless, we will have to wait a little longer for that explicit announcement sometime later. But the strongest storyline involves Liv Morgan targeting the women's world title because that would significantly heighten the current dynamic between Liv and Raquel. Here is Raquel, who has been eagerly seeking this precise championship for months. Yet in every competition, she encounters interference and ends up on the losing side, particularly in the most recent bout where it was Liv who essentially contributed to her defeat regarding the title. And now Raquel must observe as Liv Morgan receives a championship opportunity at WrestleMania 42 for the very same title she has been striving for over these months. And if Liv succeeds in capturing the title at WrestleMania, one can imagine that Raquel might experience increased feelings of envy and frustration toward Liv Morgan rather than genuine happiness for her. And that's precisely where the core of the story resides. That could lead to one of them departing from the Judgment Day group, whether it's Liv or Raquel. And then that would pave the way for a personal rivalry over the championship between Liv and Raquel. Raquel might perceive that Liv took that title away from her and doesn't merit it. And Liv would need to prevent Raquel from claiming that title from her. That certainly seems like the extended direction they are pursuing. And that's why Liv Morgan must definitely choose Stephanie for WrestleMania 42 to establish that entire sequence with Raquel. There wouldn't be a substantial narrative emerging from Liv picking Jade Cargill. It looks like the more intricate tale they are aiming for is with Liv certainly selecting the world title. And in every discussion since the Royal Rumble, Liv has been quite outspoken about her conviction that Raquel would never turn against her. How Raquel had numerous opportunities, and how she comprehends that it's now Liv's opportunity to pursue the title. But from the perspective of external observers, it definitely doesn't appear that Raquel is enthusiastically supportive right now of Liv Morgan going after the women's world title. It seems as though something is simmering within Raquel, and it's merely a question of when it will surface, and she directs it all toward Liv Morgan. Perhaps the shift happened prior to WrestleMania, during WrestleMania, or on the Raw following WrestleMania, but that significant separation is undoubtedly approaching in the coming period without a doubt. But what are your opinions on the developments today? Share your thoughts in the section below. Remember to subscribe and enable all alerts, and give a positive mark if you found this enjoyable. Appreciate you viewing. Everyone, excitement, 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 excitement. To expand on this paraphrase, let's delve deeper into the implications of Seth Rollins' statements and the overall storyline. Seth Rollins, known for his charismatic presence and strategic mind in the wrestling world, has always been a figure who thrives on mystery and psychological gameplay. By addressing the Masked Man incident in such a manner, he is not only keeping the audience engaged, but also layering the narrative with ambiguity. His quote about his shoulder not being necessary for his signature move is a clever way to redirect attention. The curb stomp, a move that involves a kick and a stomp to the head, indeed does require shoulder strength, which makes his point technically accurate. This allows fans to speculate wildly, debating whether he is confessing or merely toying with expectations. In wrestling storytelling, such teasers are common to build anticipation for future events, like potential matches or revelations at major pay-per-views. The rumors about Seth being behind the attacks add another dimension. If he is the mastermind, revealing it in an interview could be a deliberate misdirection, a swerve designed to surprise viewers later. Wrestling history is filled with such twists, where obvious clues lead to unexpected outcomes. For instance, Past storylines have seen characters like Triple H or The Undertaker orchestrating events from the shadows, only to reveal their involvement at climactic moments. Here, Seth's involvement could be similar, whereas pulling strings without being the physical perpetrator. This would protect his character from seeming too straightforward and maintain the intrigue. Regarding Braun Breaker, the victim of the attack, his role in this saga is crucial. As a rising star, a feud with an established name like Seth Rollins would elevate him significantly. The Royal Rumble attack sets up a personal vendetta, and if Seth is revealed as the orchestrator, it could lead to a high-stakes match. Paul Heyman's mention of Seth right after the incident plants seeds of doubt and connection, typical of Heyman's wise guy persona. Heyman, often associated with strategic alliances, might be in on it or simply speculating, adding layers to the plot. Shifting to the women's division, Liv Morgan's Royal Rumble win is a milestone that positions her as a top contender. Her indecision about which champion to challenge creates suspense. Teasing a move to SmackDown and Jade Cargill is a red herring, as the real story seems rooted on Raw with a Women's World Championship. Jade Cargill, a powerhouse with impressive presence, would make for a visually striking match, but it lacks the emotional depth that a storyline with Stephanie and Raquel provides. Raquel Rodriguez's repeated failures to capture the title builds sympathy and frustration for her character. Each loss, especially the one influenced by Liv's interference, heightens tension in their alliance. The Judgment Day faction, known for its internal dynamics, could fracture over this. Liv holding the title aloft after the match is symbolic, foreshadowing her intent and potentially igniting jealousy. Wrestling thrives on betrayals, and a turn by Raquel and Liv would echo classic rivalries like those between Edge and Christian or Sasha Banks and Bayley. The long-term booking suggests a build-up to a feud post-WrestleMania. If Liv wins the title, Raquel's resentment could boil over, leading to attacks or challenges. This personal story is more engaging than a cross-brand match with Jade, which might feel disconnected. Liv's interviews reinforcing her trust in Raquel contrast with visual cues of Raquel's dissatisfaction, creating dramatic irony that fans love. Overall, these storylines exemplify WWE's approach to blending athleticism with soap opera elements. They keep viewers invested by mixing action with character development and surprises. As we await further developments, the excitement builds for WrestleMania 42, where many of these threads may converge. To further elaborate, consider the broader context of WWE in 2026. With evolving rosters and cross-promotional events, storylines like these maintain continuity while introducing fresh elements. Seth Rollins' injury recovery adds realism, as wrestlers often incorporate real-life setbacks into their personas. His ability to perform limited actions despite injury mirrors past instances, like John Cena's quick returns. For Liv Morgan, her journey from underdog to Rumble winner showcases perseverance. Her alliance with Raquel, part of Judgment Day, has been a highlight, but tensions are natural in group dynamics. Stephanie, as champion, represents the establishment, making her a fitting target for Liv's challenge. In conclusion, these narratives promise thrilling television, with potential for memorable moments and character evolutions. Fans' discussions will shape perceptions, and WWE often adjusts based on reactions. Stay tuned for more updates. Now, to reach the desired length, let's revisit Seth's interview strategy. By speaking out, he controls the narrative, forcing speculation. This psychological tactic is Seth's hallmark, as seen in past feuds. The masked man gimmick recalls classic mysteries like the anonymous Raw GM or the higher power reveal, where misdirection is key. For the women's side, Liv's nonverbal cues, like raising the belt, are powerful storytelling tools. They allow for interpretation without commitment, building hype. Raquel's expressions in segments suggest underlying conflict, a subtle acting choice that enhances realism. Ultimately, these plots intertwine personal stakes with championship pursuits, core to wrestling appeal. Whether Seth is a masked man or puppet master, and if Liv's choice leads to betrayal, the outcomes will captivate audiences worldwide. Control 12. The provided text appears to be a transcript from a video or podcast discussing recent developments in professional wrestling, specifically focusing on storylines involving Seth Rollins and a mysterious figure in a mask, as well as Liv Morgan's decisions following her victory in a major event, and her interactions with Raquel Rodriguez. To paraphrase this into approximately 3,000 words, I will reword the content in my own terms expanding on the ideas to provide more detail, context, and analysis while maintaining the original meaning. I will avoid any bold text, headings, or words that could be considered sensitive, ensuring the narrative flows as a continuous piece of writing. The expansion will include explanations of the implications, historical parallels in wrestling, and speculative thoughts to reach the word count, all based on the original material. Seth Rollins has given indications that he might be linked to the person wearing the mask. We are going to explore that topic in detail. We will also check out the current situation with Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, and various other elements. Let's kick things off by talking about Seth Rollins, as this is the very first time he is openly talking about the individual in the mask. He is not just mentioning it, he seems to be hinting at his personal role in the whole thing too. In a conversation that took place not long ago, Seth Rollins shared his thoughts on the incident involving the masked person. He said something along the lines of, "I am making it clear to you at this moment. My shoulder is not in great shape, but I do not depend on my shoulders to perform my well-known action. So, I will let you put the pieces together. It is up to you to work it out." That is what he expressed. It is a statement that really makes you think, where Seth Rollins is basically letting the audience know that he could still carry out his famous technique even though his shoulder is still recovering. This, naturally, points toward the possibility that Seth could have been the one responsible for the encounter with Bron Breakker during the Royal Rumble. Seth Rollins is essentially explaining that even with his shoulder not fully functional, he could still make a brief appearance to execute a move like a stomp. He is inviting everyone to see him as a likely candidate for being the masked individual who targeted Bron Breakker at that event. There are circulating discussions suggesting that it will eventually come out that Seth Rollins was a force behind these latest series of events with a masked figure. But the part that surprises many is, if that turns out to be the case, why would Seth essentially spill such an important detail in a casual conversation? If Seth was truly the one pulling the strings in this scenario, it would make sense for things to be kept more under wraps. However, for him to participate in this discussion and pretty much openly suggest that he was the one in the mask at the Royal Rumble, it feels a bit unexpected. This leads to speculation about whether there could be another surprise or change in direction coming, because it does not seem logical that Seth Rollins would just let that major piece of information slip out in a non-event setting like an interview. So, what Seth said is definitely prompting supporters to consider the matter more carefully. Everything Seth mentioned aligns with reality. His shoulder is still not back to normal. He cannot handle heavy lifting or participate in full matches. But for a short intervention to deliver a kick and a stomp, he would not need his shoulders for those particular actions. It is a smart way to create interest and a valid point from him. From a logical perspective, it is possible that Seth Rollins is not meant to be shown as the actual masked person in the end. Yet, it also seems too straightforward for Seth to be the perpetrator. Seth's name was the first one brought up by Paul Heyman Wright when the incident happened at the Royal Rumble. And now, with Seth pretty much acknowledging the event in this conversation, it feels like something is not quite right. It cannot be that simple. Seth is encouraging us to believe that he was the one hidden at the Royal Rumble. But what if the real surprise is what people have been talking about for months, that the masked individual is not actually Seth Rollins himself, but a smart plan that Seth is coordinating from a background? It is not him physically in the disguise, but he arranged for the action to take place and is the main planner without directly participating. That seems like a path that is very much still possible. We talked about this recently, but it really appears that the only satisfying conclusion for this new storyline with a masked figure would be a matchup between Bron Breakker and Seth Rollins. Any other ending would raise questions. It just looks like the perfect way to reintroduce Seth and head toward this important contest, showing that Seth had been watching or tracking the group the entire time. That is how he could time these events so precisely. So, that was a significant comment from Seth Rollins. We will need to watch how this tale of the masked person develops, if there will be additional events, and perhaps more signs that Seth is indeed the one behind it all. Liv Morgan won the 2026 Women's Royal Rumble, and that victory gives her the chance to challenge any women's champion she wants at WrestleMania 42. Liv Morgan has not yet made her choice official. She did mention the idea of moving to SmackDown and looking at the situation with Jade Cargill in the Women's Championship, but all the clues and indicators suggest that Liv Morgan is really going for the Women's World Championship. There have been some examples where the Royal Rumble winner chooses a champion from the other brand, but usually the winner picks the champion from their own side. We saw this not too long ago with Roman Reigns. Roman has been more connected to Raw lately, and that led to him choosing to face the Raw World Champion, CM Punk. The same kind of thinking applies to Liv Morgan here. It would be odd for Liv Morgan to pick Jade Cargill and the women's title for WrestleMania 42. That does not seem like the way things are going, and it feels more like a random pairing. It looks very likely that Liv Morgan will choose a world championship because that is where the more interesting tale is, and many groundwork points have already been set. Since Liv Morgan came back in late November, Raquel Rodriguez has been trying to win the women's world title. Raquel has had several opportunities to beat Stephanie and take the championship, but Raquel has not succeeded in any of those key matches in recent months. The most recent defeat was on the Raw after the Royal Rumble, where Raquel went against Stephanie in a street fight for the title. Liv Morgan tried to assist Raquel during the match, but it was Liv's help that ended up causing a distraction for Raquel, letting Stephanie take control and win. After the match, Liv Morgan went after Stephanie, picked up the women's world title, and held it up. That moment looked like Liv Morgan was silently confirming her choice for WrestleMania 42. But we will have to wait for the formal announcement later on. The more engaging story is for Liv Morgan to pursue the women's world title because it would really build up the current situation between Liv and Raquel. Raquel has been working hard to get this specific title for months. But in every match, she faces setbacks and loses, especially in the latest one, where Liv basically caused a loss for her. Now, Raquel has to watch as Liv Morgan gets a shot at the title at WrestleMania 42, the same one she has been after. If Liv wins a title at WrestleMania, it is easy to see Raquel feeling more envy and unhappiness toward Liv Morgan instead of being supportive. That is where the true heart of the story is. It could result in one of them leaving the Judgment Day, either Liv or Raquel. Then, that would set up a personal championship rivalry between Liv and Raquel. Raquel might think Liv took the title from her and does not deserve it. Liv would have to defend the title against Raquel. That seems like the long-term plan they are following. That is why Liv Morgan needs to pick Stephanie for WrestleMania 42 to get that whole thing with Raquel started. There would not be much of a story if Liv chose Jade Cargill. It appears the more developed tale is with Liv choosing the world title. In every conversation since the Royal Rumble, Liv has been clear about believing Raquel would not turn on her. Raquel had many chances, and she knows it is Liv's time for a title shot. But from an outside view, it does not look like Raquel is thrilled about Liv going for the women's world title. It seems like something is building up inside Raquel, and it is just a matter of time before it comes out on Liv Morgan. The change might happen before WrestleMania, at WrestleMania, or on the Raw after, but that big split is coming soon. What do you think about the story today? Share your ideas below. Do not forget to subscribe with notifications turned on, and leave a like if you liked it. Thanks for watching. Energy, 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 energy. To expand this paraphrase further, let's consider the broader context and implications of these wrestling narratives. Professional wrestling, as an entertainment form, relies heavily on building suspense through character interactions and plot twists. In the case of Seth Rollins and the Masked Figure, this storyline draws from a long tradition of mystery angles in the industry. For example, past storylines have involved hidden identities or secret orchestrators, which keep fans guessing and discussing online. Seth's comment in the interview is a masterclass in this style of storytelling. By acknowledging his injury but pointing out that it wouldn't prevent a quick action, he is playing with the audience's expectations. This kind of tease is designed to generate buzz, encouraging viewers to tune into upcoming shows to see if their theories hold up. The fact that Paul Heyman mentioned Seth first adds credibility to the connection, as Heyman is often portrayed as a knowledgeable insider who drops hints that pay off later. If Seth is not the physical masked person but the one calling the shots, it allows Braun Breaker, as a target, represents a new generation of talent, and a feud with Seth will be a classic veteran versus rookie setup. This could culminate in a match that highlights Breaker's power against Seth Cunning, providing exciting in-ring moments. The Royal Rumble setting for the initial event is strategic, as that event is known for surprises and setting up WrestleMania paths. If Seth has been monitoring things from afar, it suggests a level of planning that fits his character's intelligence, perhaps tying into larger faction dynamics or personal grudges. Moving to the women's division, Liv Morgan's Royal Rumble win is a significant achievement that positions her as a top star. The Royal Rumble is one of the most prestigious events, and winning it guarantees a high-profile match at WrestleMania, the biggest show of the year. Liv's teasing of a brand switch to challenge Jade Cargill is a way to create uncertainty, but the signs point to staying on Raw. Jade Cargill is a dominant force with a unique look and style, but a match with her might lack the emotional investment compared to one involving established rivalries. The Women's World Championship on Raw has more history with Liv, especially given her return and alliances. Raquel Rodriguez's pursuit of the title adds depth to the narrative. Her repeated near misses build frustration, making her a sympathetic figure. The street fight loss, where Liv's attempt to help backfired, is a common trope in tag team or faction stories, where good intentions lead to conflict. Liv raising the title afterward is a visual cue that foreshadows her intent, a subtle way to advance the plot without words. The Judgment Day group, which includes these characters, has always had internal tensions, and this could be the catalyst for a breakup. Such splits often lead to compelling feuds, as former allies know each other's weaknesses. The potential for jealousy between Liv and Raquel is rich with storytelling potential. If Liv wins at WrestleMania, Raquel's reaction could range from forced congratulations to outright confrontation, setting up post-WrestleMania angles. This mirrors real-life dynamics in sports entertainment, where ambition can strain friendships. Liv's confidence in interviews that Raquel won't betray her creates irony, as visual storytelling shows otherwise. This contrast engages fans, who can spot the brewing tension. In terms of overall direction, these stories are building toward WrestleMania 42, where resolutions or new chapters begin. WWE often uses interviews and subtle hints to layer narratives, keeping things fresh. Fans' reactions, shared through comments and social media, influence how stories evolve, making the audience part of the experience. To delve even deeper, consider how injuries like Seth's shoulder issue are incorporated into plots. They add authenticity, as wrestlers must adapt, and can lead to creative workarounds like masked interventions. For Liv, her journey from injury return to Rumble winner shows resilience, a theme that resonates with viewers. Raquel's role as a powerhouse who can't quite clinch the big win builds anticipation for her eventual success or heel turn. Ultimately, these elements combine to create an engaging product that blends athleticism with drama. As the stories progress, more details will emerge, keeping everyone invested. The call for comments and subscriptions at the end encourages community interaction, a key part of modern content creation.